Hello there, I'm Miranda Gretton, and this is Take a Moment with NCHC, the show where we talk to you and your colleagues about experiences that affect you. Listen on your drive between patients or in your downtime, whenever you get the chance to take a moment.
My name's Carlie and I'm a senior nurse within the community access team. I had my daughter in October 2021, a little girl called Autumn, and I returned to work November 2022.
We're talking today about returning to work after having a baby. I've had two children myself, and I know returning to work after parental leave is a stressful time. It's a scary time. It's exciting as well, but it can be very stressful. So tell me your story then. So from becoming pregnant with Autumn, obviously, as you get bigger in your pregnancy, did you find it quite difficult being at work, sort of in the lead up to mat leave?
Yeah, so I found out I was pregnant about I think 5 or 6 weeks, and then a couple of days later my sickness started. And so I got some anti-sicknesses from the GP, and they said, oh, by 16 weeks it should subside because your levels significantly drop, past the first trimester. So I was holding out till 16 weeks, and I was being sick like 9, 10 times a day. 16 weeks came and the sickness kept coming, and then I got to 20 weeks and it kept coming, and so eventually I was put under consultant-led care for my hyperemesis. And then also about 21 weeks, my pelvic girdle pain started as well. So I was basically like unable to walk without sort of crutches almost, and being sick like anywhere from 5 to 15 times a day. So working in the NHS as a nurse with masks still very much necessary and needed, and I was working in the community at this point, it was horrific. It was absolutely horrible. I remember being really early pregnant and like nearly throwing up in a patient's home, and so it was really hard. It was really mentally, impacting the first 12 weeks. The impact on not only my physical health but my mental health was, with being that heavily pregnant, being sick with pelvic girdle pain, it was so debilitating. I ended up taking early mat leave at I think around 33, 34 weeks. I just couldn't carry on.
Oh my God,
But
what a ride
yeah,
though. I
it
mean,
was,
that's
yeah,
horrendous.
you name it, I pretty much had it during pregnancy. It was definitely a tough time.
So in that case then, so if you went on early mat leave,
Yeah.
how long did you have for
So
maternity leave?
I'd taken a year off, but because I'd acquired obviously my annual leave, I just utilised that first. Then I took mat leave from I think the 4th of October. Yeah, just utilised my annual leave as much as I could either side. So sort of try and go off as early as I could and try and go back as late as I could because I didn't want to miss the milestones. I knew I wanted to try and get up until at least Autumn's first birthday, and I did. And then I had a few weeks after that as well. And I didn't put pressure on myself to return to work within sort of, the 9 months. I said, no, take a year and go from there, because when it actually got to the 9 months, and I think it would have been July, August, yeah, July time, I was like, no, there's no way I'm ready. I wasn't in a good headspace to leave her just yet.
It happens to so many people, doesn't it? Because what happens is you go in with all the good intentions and saying, I love my job and I'm definitely going back. And then you have the baby and you as a person change and your bond with the baby is so strong that sometimes you can think, I don't know if I can do this. But obviously financially, most people do have to find a way to get back to work. I certainly did. And so you have to sort of find balance with
Yeah.
how much you
I
want to be with your baby, but also how much you do need to get back to work. Did you struggle with that decision?
Yeah, so finances are a massive thing for us. With maternity pay, we did really struggle, but because my pregnancy was so rough, we don't know if I'm going to have another one, to be completely honest. So I thought if this is the only other maternity I'm ever going to have, I need to really cherish every moment of it. And while I've got the opportunity to take a year off, why don't we take a year off? And I put it to my partner Jacob, I put it to my mum, I put it to my mother-in-law, and they were like, no, you're never going to get this back ever again. So we will all, try and do as much as we can. And we have muddled through. I started booking kit days from early October, and I did really enjoy them. And I thought, no, this is what I need to do. I need to come back, albeit part time, which is more than enough for me, but it definitely is what I need
So those kit days are keeping in touch days. Did you
Mm.
speak to your line manager at those points about how you wanted to come back, like in terms of sort of working more flexibly or changing your working pattern? And how responsive was the trust to those sort of requests?
So I initially put in a flexible working policy, and we had a meeting over that, which agreed my hours and days. Because of childcare, I needed set days, and my managers at the time were amazing with that. They really listened to my needs and they really listened to my worries. We sort of had to rejig a little bit to cover the service, but albeit they were pretty much 80% the days that I wanted, and actually it's worked out really well. Then when I contacted my managers about doing kit days, they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, I'd come in at 8 and I'd go about 12, and they were like, "That's absolutely fine, Carlie. Do what you need to do, even if it is just a mandatory training, just to get yourself in the team again." Because my whole job role had changed, the whole team had changed, the management had changed, so it was completely different from when I left off my maternity. So it was coming in and reintroducing myself, and I felt I do still feel like the new girl, even though I aren't the new girl within the team, and getting to the grips with the job that had completely changed. I felt so out of the know and out of the loop. But the kit days were really good, and I recommend anybody who's thinking of doing them to absolutely do them, because even if it's something as simple as getting yourself logged on and knowing that you can log on to the systems and the platforms that you need to, you aren't going to come back with that anxiety on day one.
Just as you were talking there, I can remember it vividly coming back into a team that maybe, I don't know, 30% of the team was how it was when I'd left. And there were all these new faces. And the people who did remember me were like, hey, welcome back. Good to see you. But the people who didn't had been there, some of them had been there for just under a year. They
Yeah,
maybe started
exactly.
just after I was
Yeah,
out the door and then they came in kind of thing. So they were established members of staff, but they were
yeah,
brand new people to me.
yeah.
So, it was that weird sort of dynamic of I've been here. I feel like I'm established, but also I've not been here for a year, so I'm not established. And it was that weird sort of finding your feet again. And it is quite strange for everybody, not just for you, but for the people in the team to sort of have you slot back in with some people as if you've known them your whole life and other people you've never met. It's odd, isn't it?
I said to them, I said, treat me like a new starter, like I know nothing. And they were like, no, you do. And I said, no, 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 treat me like I know nothing, because if I did know it, I certainly wouldn't know how to do it now. I think that worked really well. And obviously, now being back since middle of November, finding my feet now again, definitely. I still have the odd day where I think, oh, what are we doing? What's that? But it was really difficult to find my feet within the team and establish a role and things like that.
Definitely. And like you say, if you did know how to do something, chances are it's either changed or you won't remember. And,
No.
if you've been up all night with the baby, because this is another added pressure of coming back from, any kind of parental leave, whether you're the mother or the father, you're coming back into the workplace with things that people might assume that you're perfectly comfortable with. Your line manager, your colleagues might say, oh, yeah, she knew how to do that 12 months ago, so she'll be fine. Let her get on with it, kind of thing. And you might remember it to an extent, but you've had a bad night, you're exhausted, the cogs aren't necessarily whirring as much as they would have done previously. And you don't feel comfortable. You do want some support. So that's on you then to put your hand up and say, I need some support. I need someone to help me
Mm.
through this. And that's quite a pride thing. Sometimes you want to look like you've got it all together.
I
Did you struggle with that?
That is ultimately the thing that I struggle the most, and why I put forward for this podcast idea, because my daughter, she'd slept through from 5 weeks old, and at the lovely bright age of 10 months old decided she'd never want to sleep through ever again. And so coming back to work was on 2 3 hours sleep was just, oh, it was horrific, absolutely horrific, and nothing I'd ever experienced before. And I actually was so hard on myself. I was like, why can't I do both? Why can't I fully function as a nurse and fully function as an adult? And I never felt that I was putting 100% into both aspects. I felt like if I was trying to focus on work and trying to, read up on things at home about work that I was trying to catch up on, I felt like a really bad parent. And then when I came into work, really tired, really deflated, feeling really like I can't do this, I felt really bad in my nurse aspect, that I felt as if I was a failing as a nurse. So I felt that I never could marry the two together, and I felt that how can millions of these working mums do it, yet I'm struggling so much. And I felt like I was the only one that was struggling, because all my colleagues, the children, are sort of grown up. But they actually said to me, and they sat me down, they said, Carlie, we've all been through there. It's only because our children are older, that they've got a bit more independence. And Autumn's only one, she is your sole dependent, and you need to stop being so hard on yourself. And I still to this day beat myself up, and I still think I'm either showing too much to one or not enough to the other. And I think finding the balance of the working parent, especially as a nurse or within the NHS, it's such a fine line. And it's taken me months to try and find some balance.
It's a
And I'm still
juggle.
struggling now. It
Well,
really
you
is a
will.
juggle,
You will.
really.
And that's the thing. And I think, we almost have to resign ourselves to the fact that it is a juggle and it will continue probably until they're adults. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always going to be an emergency where we have to down tools and go off and do, there's
Yeah.
always going to be something. And I think the most important thing there is that you are not alone in this. Every parent feels like this. It's just that we don't talk about it enough. I think we
I think
don't
that's the
put our
thing.
hands up and
Yeah.
go, this is really hard. Because otherwise, like you say, you're looking around you and you're going, well, how come they can cope? And the thing is, they're not coping. They feel as tired as you. And the guilt. I remember dropping my son at nursery and he was crying and screaming. And the woman walked off with him and he had his hand outstretched towards me and he was just going,
Mm.
Mommy, like this. And I have never felt so bad. I had to just, bye, darling, turn on my heels
Yeah.
and walk away. And then you have the journey from nursery to work feeling so awful about yourself and have I made questioning everything, have I made the right decision, I should be with him, this is awful, he's going to have a horrible time, blah blah blah. Then you arrive at work and you've got to just crack on. You don't discuss it with anyone, you just crack on. And I
Yeah.
think the point there is that we should, and I remember actually doing that. I did used to come in and say, oh my God, I just had the most horrendous drop off. And other parents would say, oh yeah, me too, or that happened to me.
Mm.
It's sharing those stories because then you can get into work with a clear head and you know you're not alone.
I think with every aspect of it, isn't it? The juggle is real. Luckily, my mother-in-law looks after Autumn primarily most days that I'm at work. She still has days now where I walk out the door and she is going, Mum, 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 or, she's wanting me to play with her or play with her kitchen or whatever. And I'm like, Mummy's got to go to work, darling, Mummy's got to look after sick people. And we've started doing like little role play of like nurses and doctors and things. It's really hard. I have really struggled.
And that's
Yeah.
completely understandable. And I think a lot of people will resonate with this conversation because regardless of whether you're leaving your child at a nursery or whether you're leaving them with family, or even whether you're being a stay-at-home mum, I think we always have that guilt. And I just wonder whether that comes part and parcel with being a parent, that we're always going to
Yeah.
feel like we're not doing enough.
I do think no matter how much you do for your child, you always are thinking, well, what could I have done more, or what could I have done better?
One thing that really helped me when my first child went to nursery and I struggled with the mum guilt was to try and remember the importance of social interaction for children. So we are obviously so important to their development as their parent, of course we are, but you can't underestimate the importance of that social connection with not just other adults but other children as well, in a setting where as they get older, there are other adults that can give you care. There are other adults that give you love. There are other adults that give you discipline. There are other adults that add things to your life. And then there are those sort of moments with other children, like sharing and taking turns and all those kind of things. And I think when they have those opportunities as young children, they actually find going to school a little bit easier. We can almost offset some of that guilt with the benefits of not being with us, if that makes sense.
Mm,
As heart-wrenching as it is, there are definite benefits to them spending
definitely,
time away from us.
definitely. Starting to leave her was actually really good for myself as well, but also really good for her development, because my partner Jacob, he's got three little brothers, so actually her being spoilt by his little brothers and things like that. And yeah, it was also creating the bonds for them as well, and their bonds as like niece and uncle. And then leaving her at nursery, actually by I think the first week she was walking herself in, and would put her arms up to the lady who was her key worker. just the bonds that she's building and seeing her become more and more confident. And it's now like we go to one group on a Thursday and it's almost like the autumn show. She's just standing in the middle, living her best life, dancing, clapping, singing. And everyone says to me, "Oh, she's so confident." And I sit and I say to them, "I don't know where she gets it from. It's certainly not me." And she's just so funny. And actually, it's so good for her development to be doing these activities and groups. And it's really good for her to be around children of a similar age. And it's really good for my mental health as well to get out and meet mums and get out and know that what Autumn is doing is actually so normal.
Was anybody sort of a bit, did anyone have any judgment on your decision to return to work?
I don't think they ever sort of judged it, because obviously being a nurse you have your hours to keep up, you have your pin to keep active and things like that. So I don't think I had any judgment, but I definitely felt as if when I went to some of these groups where they may have not known about sort of keeping your pin active and things like that, they probably were like, "Oh, you're going back 3 days a week. I'm going to go back like 2 mornings a week." And I'm like, "No, financially and also for my pin and things, I need to go back probably about 30 hours a week." "Oh my word, you're leaving her for 30 hours a week?" And yeah, "Oh, well, you'll still have the weekends together." "Oh no, well, I'm a nurse. We cover a 7-day service." Oh, and so I found myself almost sort of like questioning, do I want to go back to nursing almost? And I was like, no, 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 don't think that. You do want to be a nurse. But it definitely did make me question. And when I heard people are doing like 12, 13, 14 hours a week, I was like, oh my word, am I doing 30 hours? Is that loads? But actually it's not. I do 3 longer days a week. Okay, Autumn is in bed by the time I go home usually, but actually it's really nice to have that little evening by myself. And I'm the first person that she sees when she wakes up in the morning, so she absolutely loves it. And so her face in the morning is just the best thing. And then when I do go home and she's awake, it's almost like a little bonus, really. I know that there is judgment out there and I know that people do get judged.
The point, I suppose, is we're going to get judgment whatever we do because we make decisions on what we think is right for our child, whether that is what we put in their mouths or, their education or coming back to work and their childcare options. I think whatever happens, we just need to know that what we're doing is right for not only them but our families as well. Like, you've got yourself to think about, you've got your partner to think about. You need to do what's right for you. And having those evenings when you get home and Autumn's in bed, I think that's such a nice thing to have. Like, I'm actually starting to focus on that a bit more now for my own well-being, is some time to myself. We underestimate as parents how important it is to have some time for your own well-being, because you're
Yeah,
always putting other people first. And as a nurse, you're doing that in your home life and at work. So
yeah.
when is Carly time, And so having those evenings is brilliant because it means you can reconnect with your partner, you can watch some trash on TV, and you can just take some time. And you don't have to feel guilty for that because Autumn's had a great day.
That's what I do. I fully devote myself to her the days I have off. Like, I will non-stop play with her, feed her homemade food. I will go the full, with her. But on when she's in bed, I take a long hot bath. I have a cup of tea. That for me is me time, that I don't have to worry about her. She's asleep. So
It's really
yeah.
important. It's really important. And I think we need to do that more. And I do feel like we're constantly doing things for other people as parents. And, like I say, doubly if you're a nurse as well. So it's so important to take that time and to look
I
after
really
yourself.
I do. I've always found though, like with being a nurse, I've needed that time to debrief with myself and my own brain and sort of think about, and okay, what did I do today? Could I have done anything better?
I think we need to all just be in it together and have a lot more sort of compassion for ourselves, but also our colleagues and our peers who are going through the same things. And we should just sort of ask any new parent who's come back into the office, are you all right? What do you need?
I think
How
there's
can we
such
support
a
you?
I think there's such a big thing on being pregnant in the workplace and maternity, and there isn't anything about returning to work. There isn't clear guidance on what is expected from you for kit days, what is expected from you for the 9 or the 12 months. And so I think something needs to be created about returning to work following a period of leave, any form of leave really, because obviously that delayed long period of time off does really affect you returning, and almost the expectations that are put on you from returning. I thought I could just come back to work pick up from where I left off and not think about autumn, not talk about autumn, and just carry on being a nurse. I've come back to work. I've got to think of 100 million things. It was so overwhelming, and I just didn't know where to start.
I did find something when I Googled returning to work. There is an NHS page, which I'll put a link to in the show notes, which has got a little bit of advice, things like focusing and reflecting on what skills you've gained from your leave as
Mm,
as a new parent, so time management, communication, new perspective. There's all these sort of positives that you can bring back to the workplace, and even taking some time to write down the strengths that you bring to your job.
mm,
So success stories from prior to being on paternity leave, as well as things that you've learned whilst on leave. And then when you're stressed or you're struggling, you can go back to the list and remind yourself of your strengths, to be able to remind yourself that you are valid and that you deserve to be there, and that you're more than just a new parent. You are still that person that you sort of left behind, but equally that you are changed as a person, and that that's okay. I think there's a lot of feeling that we have to prove ourselves when we return to work.
definitely. I think that is the thing I've learnt the most, is actually me turning up to work, me trying my best is enough, and that actually being perfect in every aspect of your life, being the perfect parent, being the perfect nurse, just isn't a viable thing so early on in my working parent, life, that actually the balance will somewhat come, be it in the future. Things will come back to me naturally, but it's just working differently.
Thank you for listening to Take a Moment with NCHC. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please visit the podcast intranet page to leave a comment and for details of our other episodes. You can also follow NCHC on all social media channels.